Okay, I call this meeting to order, as long as Stanley will stop calling me the loser because of my verdict across the street.
Employment Protection Act.
Yeah, okay, all right. We are here, Ag Committee. Sean, please open the roll. And
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
thank you. Okay. We're going to get to patrons in a second, but Senator McClellan wants to get in and out of here so she can get back across the street. So Senator McClellan, go ahead.
Got two important ones to pass by. You probably got folks.
Yeah, okay.
So, Mr. Chair, the first one I'm going to ask go by for the week, and that is Senate Bill 489.
Senate Bill 489. Okay, water quality funds, localities, and fiscal stress. You want that by for the week?
Yes.
Okay, Sean, is next week our last meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that if it's going by for the week, you're going to the fourth quarter, so, okay.
I know. Well, if it has some issues that if they can't be fixed, I'm going to ask you to carry it over.
Okay, always happy to do that. Okay, what else you got?
All right, Senate Bill 482, I have a substitute.
Okay, let's distribute the substitute. We have a motion and a second to distribute the substitute or adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Substitute is adopted. Lisa, if you could please circulate that.
And so Senate Bill 482 codifies the Governor Northam's Executive Order 82, which set up a system of consultation with federally recognized tribal nations, with various agencies, whenever various permits that have potential impacts on environmental, cultural, or historic resources are being considered. I will say the substitute was worked out to address concerns brought by the Farm Bureau and agribusiness. It is my understanding there is peace in the valley with the substitute.
Okay. Senator, and I appreciate this, could you just give a little bit of background? I know most of us have been brief, but just for the audience at home, our millions of people, just let them know what's going on here.
Absolutely. So, we have, I believe at this point, 8 federally recognized tribes here in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Right.
And Governor Northam's Executive Order 22 issued earlier this year, which agencies are already implementing, called for various state agencies to consult with tribal nations when they issue permits for projects that could affect those tribal nations' environmental, historic, or cultural resources. The concept here really is that backing up at the beginning of a project, making sure that if you're going to have the likelihood that you could disturb a burial ground or some other sacred land to one of the tribes, if it is on land that was part of their historic footprint, that they're brought in at the front part of the project to figure that out. I think that's in the best interest of everyone for a number of reasons. One, these are these are sovereign nations that we owe our respect whenever we're going to do anything that impacts their land, their history, their culture, that we are bringing them in the loop. I think for businesses and permit holders, if you are going to run into an issue where you impact one of these tribal concerns, you want to know that up front and not later in the project when you've already spent considerable amounts of money. So as I said, the substitute, there were some concerns brought by agribusiness and the Farm Bureau. We worked with them on the substitute, and I believe we have peace in the valley.
Okay. Mr. Chair. Any questions for the panel? Senator Stanley.
Mr. Chair, Senator McClellan, for my guidance, because I've represented 13 members of the Lower Mattaponi, or the Mattaponi tribe. In that tribe, the chief and tribal council do not allow and have not allowed women to vote on tribal matters for tribal council or for tribal chief. Do any of these tribes that are listed and federally recognized suffer from the same disability. That is to say, they don't let women in their tribe vote on tribal matters, for tribal council, or for tribal chief.
Off of the top of my head, I am not aware of their sovereign governing structures. However, I would say that's not relevant to this bill because this is not giving the tribe voting authority over a permit. This is more putting the onus on our state agencies to just consult with the
Okay.
tribes on a project.
Further questions?
Senator Stanley.
So does then the Mattaponi tribe, which I'm describing to you, are they included in this bill or are they excluded from this bill?
If they are federally recognized.
They are not.
Then, as I recall the bill, it is the federally recognized tribes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Senator McClellan, does the Voting Rights Act apply to Indian tribes?
It should.
Which one?
Any of them?
So that's a good question that I don't know the
I have
answer
no
to.
idea.
I mean, federally recognized Indian tribes, is my understanding, are sovereign nations. I have not read the Federal Voting Rights Act to see if it applies
Okay.
to their.
I apologize. I don't
Yeah,
mean
I
to
don't
get
know.
you off on, I was curious. Okay, do we have any other questions from the panel? I do think this has been scoped back a good bit. Does anyone want to testify in support of the bill? Please come forward and just tell us your name and who you represent. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Chief Frank Adams. I'm of the Upper Mattaponi Indian Tribe in King William County, Virginia.
Okay.
And to answer Senator Stanley's thing, we have a lot of female leadership in our tribe, so everybody gets one vote. Oops, excuse me.
Okay.
And so I think all the federally recognized tribes have female leadership on their council or even chiefs
Okay.
of their tribes. But our tribal service area is in Senator McClellan, Senator Morrissey's, and Senator Hashmi's districts. We have a 25-mile service area that we can service our citizens around our tribal center, our tribal building. And I'm here to express support for the Senate Bill 482. And I want to assure you that our tribe does not oppose development, but would like to be consulted early on just to save developers a lot of money and time and to give us the opportunity to speak on something before they have delved so far into it. Thank you for your consideration and your support.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Please come forward.
Good afternoon. Trip Pollard with the Southern Environmental Law Center, and also on behalf of Preservation Virginia, the country's oldest statewide preservation organization. For all the reasons so eloquently stated, we support this bill. We note early consultation is a win-win for developers, for the tribal nations, and for protecting our natural, historic, and cultural resources, and we urge you to pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Trip. Okay. Anyone else in support? Peggy.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Peggy Sander with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. We believe that advance notice of permit and related actions is important for all communities and certainly should be extended to the tribal communities at issue here. We support the bill and thank the senator for bringing it.
Thank you, Peggy. Anyone else in support? Anyone in opposition to the bill? Okay, is the DEQ the one that comes up with these policies?
What you mean for the EO or for the
I have a Mike
consultation?
Rolband sighting. 1 second. Mr. Director.
Thank you, sir. Actually, DCR is the lead agency on this particular bill.
Okay, all right.
But DEQ does not have a position this time.
Okay, but where it says department in 10.1, that's DCR?
They're different. I
It's
can
both.
answer that.
Yeah, you-
It's both?
Yeah, I can answer that. So
Okay.
there are several departments that would fall under, DEQ is one of them. But it also would be the Department of Conservation and Recreation, the Department of Historic Resources, the Virginia Marine Resources Commission. So depending on what part of the bill you're looking at is which agency it's talking about. And basically, each of them issue various permits related to things under their jurisdiction And this just says that for each of those agencies, they will consult with the potentially impacted tribes for those permits.
Okay. All right, I think the bill's been adequately explained. Does anyone have? We've adopted the substitute. Oh, I'm sorry, we have a speaker in support. Sean, you want to let him through?
Brett Hunsinger, would you please unmute and begin your testimony?
Yes, thank you. My name is Brent Hunsinger, Friends of the Rappahannock. We very much value our relationships with the tribes in the Rappahannock River watershed and support this bill. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Okay, we've got a motion to report. I have a second. Finance, okay. There's a report and refer to finance. Clerk, open the roll.
It was the other one.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
14 to Obenshain, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All righty. Before we get to Surville, I've got Delegate Wilt here. So Delegate, come forward. Oh, you know what? Senator Stewart just reminded me, he's got bills to pass by. So if you're waiting for him, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I would like to pass by Senate Bill 532 and 695. And I imagine that's garnered a little bit of interest, so I didn't want folks to sit and wait for those bills if they're not going to be called up. I would move that they go by for the day.
Okay, so Senate Bill 532 and 695. 695. And that's the air pollution board, the Reggie and the air pollution board. So those are two pretty big items that are going by for next week. I've got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, those two bills are kicked to next week. Delegate Wilt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Before you is House Bill 828, and the reason I'm here already is that there is an emergency, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to the bill. As you remember, last year we passed the Dairy Margin Coverage Premium Assistance Program bill. It's a federal program. Basically, it's an insurance for our small and mid-sized dairy farmers to help protect them when milk prices are low. So, but what happened, Mr. Chairman, we put a date in there, like a cutoff date of February 1. Well, the federal program this year didn't start when it should have, so it really put our farmers back a bit of a crunch. And so what this bill does is move that back to May 15th. And also, Mr. Chairman, there was a question brought up that folks that are part of nutrient management plans through the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service soil health plans. Okay, so ours, you had to have a nutrient management plan, but there was some concern that if a farmer was part of the federal nutrient plan, that were they included, so we put some language in there to make sure they were covered. That's the bill.
Okay, so the bill has been explained. This is House Bill 828. This has an emergency clause, which is why we're taking it very quickly. Anyone to testify in support? Kyle.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kyle Shreve on behalf of the Virginia Agribusiness Council. Delegate Wilt explained the bill and the reason why we need to move it forward with all haste, as today is February 1st, and we want to make sure VDAX can announce that this program will continue until May 15th. I would also note that May 15th, we checked with VDAX, is the last date they can process an application and not have it impact the Commonwealth's fiscal year at the end to make sure you can make those payments. We do not want to impact the Commonwealth's budget, which is the reason why it's drafted the way it is.
Okay, thank you. Barbara, I see you have a question.
Could somebody explain to me who an approved planner is?
Yes, ma'am. DCR has a program which you have to go through. They have to approve you as a certified nutrient management planner. Those planners often write plans to both DCR specs as well as the federal government specs through NRCS. NRCS approved plans, the reason you'd work with them as a farmer depends on what you're planting, the rates, the time of year, and we just want to make sure that if a producer is choosing to work with NRCS, they don't miss out on our state program.
Oh, good.
We get credit for it in the model regardless of who they work with.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, in support.
Mr. Chairman, Eric Paulson with Virginia State Dairymen's Association. We support the bill.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Stephanie Talon with Virginia Farm Bureau. We also support the program and the bill and thank the patron for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, Chris. All right, who's next?
Jim Riddell with Virginia Cattlemen's Association, representing thousands of cattlemen across the state. We support the bill. Thank you.
Great.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Chris Lane, Virginia League of Conservation Voters. For the reasons stated, we support this bill as well.
Okay, great.
Move to report, second.
Okay, well, hold on. Is anyone in opposition? All right. Okay. All right, go ahead. We have a motion, a second report to bill. Clerk, open the.
Senator Bill, this one also is headed.
Also to finance. Clerk, open the roll. Are we open?
Ayes 15, noes 0.
Okay, ayes 15, noes 0. The bill reports and is referred to finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members, for your consideration.
Okay. All right, we have two out-of-committee patrons. Which one of y'all got here first?
I think you did.
Ryan.
Thank you.
Okay.
Probably faster.
I was faster 27 years ago in college, still am. Was that what it is? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Senate Bill 398. Mr. Chairman, this bill deals with Reggie, but more restrictive than the bill that Senator Stewart asked that would go by a little bit ago. There's a company located in Doswell in the western part of Hanover, and I think, and I don't want to misspeak, but I think it was the only center that was producing power that did not have a provision in their contract where they could pass through the cost of Reggie back to the facility. So it's costing them at about $20 million a year, which is a substantial impact to the particular entity. So this, in essence, would allow them to be able to recover their costs, which were not done contractually, and the bill would sunset in 2025. So even though it is extremely impactful for the particular facility, it is very focused in its application to the Commonwealth.
Okay. So just a few preliminary questions. I remember this pretty clearly from last year. It's one company that's impacted, and they're receiving what we call in the industry a stranded cost by virtue of the regulatory cost, and they're asking permission to effectively pass it on to their ratepayers? Is that,
Mr. Chairman,
I
guess they, onto their customers, because they don't have ratepayers, because they're just a generator and they sell their power to others.
Who are their customers?
That is, I think they could have more than one customer, but
okay,
I'll ask, phone a friend.
Can we phone a friend here? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, B. Gonzalez with Capital Results, representing Alice Power, along with my colleague, Ben Denny of Vector Corporation. We are a power purchaser, producer, and then we sell that power to other utilities, investor-owned utilities, and other power purchase companies. So we're kind of the go-between. We have a Doswell facility.
You're an independent power producer. You produce the power.
Yes, sir.
Where's your plant located?
Doswell, Virginia is one of our
Doswell.
plants in Virginia.
And
Yes.
is it, with a gas-fired?
Gas. Mhm.
Okay, so it's a gas-fired plant, and then you sell it into the grid effectively?
Yes, and if you remember correctly, we were part of the DEQ work group many moons ago under the McAuliffe administration, where it was contemplated that these allowances would be permitted, like they do in Connecticut, New York, and some other states, and then found out that the bill in the last administration did not have those allowances. So you all were kind enough to accommodate another company as well as others, and so we're asking for that relief. In fairness, the state raised $268 million. $64 million then was originally anticipated, so our cost of that was $20 million in the
So
first year.
$20 million that you all paid in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, any questions from the panel? Okay, anyone in support? Anyone in opposition? Here they come, okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Nate Benferrado with the Southern Environmental Law Center. This proposal was considered in 2020. It's already been rejected. There was even a full Senate floor vote. It failed 21-19. This is 7 million allowances that will be set aside for a private sophisticated company, and actually there's provisions that could actually increase that number of allowances. Looking at recent auction prices, say the market price of allowance is $8, that would represent $42 million that right now would be going to low wealth families to reduce energy bills, and flooding for communities that really never had access to a dedicated straight stream of funding before Reggie. This is not a trivial amount. If you just look at what they want to set aside for this year, for example, it would be 2 million allowances. That's nearly 8% of the state's entire supply of allowances. Ellis Power could actually take the discounted allowances, so they have a set fixed price of $2 an allowance, and they could sell what they've already bought for 2021 and 2022. They could sell that and then turn around, potentially even profit on those allowances, and buy the set rigged market price of $2 an allowance. And I'll note that the decision that this body made 2 years ago for Tenaska, which was the other contractual agreement, that was a long-term agreement that was entered into in 2001. And moreover, that provision did not result in Virginia losing any proceeds from this. That provision merely said, instead of this party paying for the allowances, the counterparty in this particular circumstance will be paying for the allowances. This is a very different proposal. These contracts were entered into in 2016, 2017. Ellis Power could have and should have protected itself by contract. It failed, and I do not think this body should give them a corporate handout to a private company that since the 1990s has raised over $47 billion in financing.
In what? I didn't
In
understand.
financing through debt and equity markets. It's a large company, and we believe they should be paying the market price just like other entities.
Okay, thank you. All right. We have a question from Senator Stewart.
I'm just trying to understand this, and so I have a very simple, practical question. I think somebody testified it was nearly $300 million was gained out of these auctions last year, and this particular company that Senator McDougal's trying to get relief for had to eat that. Is that correct? The
Well,
20 million. But every other company passed this through to the ratepayers to pay this, and no other private company had to eat that on their books. Is that accurate?
Well, first of all, the amount is actually $228 million for the first 4 quarterly auctions that Virginia sold its allowances for. And secondly, Reggie works through a market signal, and so I believe you should keep that market signal to reduce emissions. That's how the program works and is designed. Now, if you're talking about, the Dominions and the APCOs of the world, they have captive customers, and we have a regulator to stand in for that market force. So I don't think providing a handout is appropriate in this way, where the company, since 2017, has been able to protect itself through the contract, and it should have done it in these contracts too.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
That's the second part of my question. You went ahead. I think you answered my question, yes, but I'm not sure. But that's the second part of my question. Why is it fair that this one company doesn't get relief, but everybody else gets to pass it through to somebody else? Explain the fairness of that to me.
Well, that's the system we have in Virginia. We have regulated monopoly utilities, and Ellis Power has chosen to operate as an independent power producer, and that's their choice. And they took a risk in these contracts, and I think that they should have to live with that decision. I don't think it's this body's responsibility to bail them out.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Senator Stewart.
Are you telling me this company is omnipotent and they could read what was getting ready to happen?
Absolutely not.
So the law was changed in midstream with them, and now they've got to eat 20 million, but everybody else gets to pass it through.
I don't believe you have to be omnipotent to protect yourself from foreseeable consequences in the Commonwealth.
All right. I don't want to get into a dialogue too much. Next person come up.
Wait, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on.
Can I ask one question?
All right, Senator
So
Mason.
He just suggested that you take the allowances at a cost, and then you could turn around and sell them and make a profit. Did I hear that correctly?
That's my read of the bill, yes.
Senator McDougal, can you speak to that?
All right.
I think that's an important distinction.
Mr. Chairman, I think specifically, and I'll point you to lines 88, 89, and it says they cannot purchase in a given year, cannot exceed a purchase for the amount that they're using. So I don't So I guess if they wanted not to well, even if they didn't operate, they can't buy more than what they're using. So I don't know how they would be able to do under the provisions of this language. I don't see how they could sell it. So if they weren't using them for their operation, then they can't make a purchase greater than that if you go with the language that's in the bill as proposed.
All right, let's do this. I want to have the entities come forward, and if you've got something new to say, great. If you want to say, I feel strongly with Southern Environmental, then say that too, okay?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Mr. Turner, on behalf of the Virginia Conservation Network, and for all the reasons outlined by my colleague, Nate Benferato, we also oppose this bill. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Connor Kish with the Sierra Club.
By the way, you don't have to wear the mask if you don't want to. It's up to you.
I'll keep it. just
Okay,
to
all right,
say.
seems like
Thank
we-
you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all right. Yep.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Kim Jermaine with the Chesapeake Climate Action Network and the Associated Action Fund. Mr. Benferato covered our concerns, and we strongly oppose the legislation.
Okay.
Walter Shepard with the NRDC. I just don't think the General Assembly should be in the business of getting involved in private contracts. You know, I've got a terrible contract with my landlord. You know, I'm not asking you for help. Thank you.
All right. Hey, Chris.
Chris
Hey,
Lane,
what a
Virginia
good-looking
League
guy.
Conservation
Okay.
Force.
all
Thank
right.
you, sir.
right.
Yeah, you can see all of it too.
Okay.
We, for the reasons articulated by our friends at the Southern Environmental Law Center, the Virginia League of Conservation Voters does oppose this legislation.
Okay, thank you.
Blair St. Ledger Olson Climate Cabinet and the Associated Action Fund, we oppose this legislation. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Lena Lewis with the Nature Conservancy, we oppose this bill.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Peter Anderson with Appalachian Voices. We'd like to associate ourselves with the comments of the Southern Environmental Law Center, and we'd also just rhetorically ask if one participant in this market, which is multi-state, gets special treatment, what market signal does that send to the other independent power producers as well as the vertically integrated utilities that have to participate in this market? So why are we making a special carve-out for one utility?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Ryan, you got a lot to respond to. I think, to me, it kind of focuses down on this one issue, and that is, does this bill reduce the amount of revenue that's generated by Reggie? And/or is it money that's passed on to the end user? And if so, what's the end date on that? I mean, when do we get out of this?
Mr. Chairman, I think what will happen is they will still be sold, but they will be able to get back the amount that were sold for their allowances. And that's why the provisions are in line 88 and 89, saying they cannot sell more than the provisions under their allowances. So yes, ultimately, it would mean if, I'm just going to use round numbers, 300 million was sold with Reggie, their allowances came up to be 20 million, then the state would only, at the end, net out 280 million from their sales, because they wouldn't. So what's happening with everybody else is that cost is being passed through to the consumer somewhere else. And so they're eating it now. But I do not think it was accurate that they can, under the language, that they are able to purchase more or resell anything other than what they use. So I don't think that's provision.
All right, I got some questions. Senator Marson.
And I'm not going to talk about landlord-tenant law, where it seems like a lot of contractual
Okay, all right.
things were changed in the last year regarding that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Were there similarly situated power-producing companies who made a different decision and were able to take advantage of the law as it was? And or were you just the only one, was LS the only one that made a poor decision? Were there other similarly situated folks who did it differently?
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer Senator. I think the progression of this, some of these contracts are long-term, and that's why the end date's 2025. We can argue whether a corporate counsel should have been retained or let go based on how they wrote the contract. Some companies foresaw issues, some did not. I think LS thought that they were negotiating with a previous administration so that they were going to be covered in the language of Reggie as it went through the process from Virginia, and they were not. And so that's been their effort to try to claw back in. So the contracts were done long before Reggie came about. So they were done, they thought that there was, as the bill was going through originally, that they could negotiate through that process. They were unsuccessful in that. So I do not think that there's another entity that was hung out in Virginia. I think this is the only one.
Senator Morrissey.
I'm just going to, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to follow up on Senator Marsden's question. He asked specifically, could this company, LS Power, have done something to protect themselves? And a close corollary to that question is, did other companies do something to protect themselves? Two very narrow questions.
Mr. Chairman, I was corrected a little bit. So I think other companies did have contractual provisions where their costs were passed through to the end receiver of power. So if they were an independent entity like this one, when it was sold to the grid, it got returned back to them through that. There was another company in Virginia, Tenaska, and they did get some relief through the process of the Reggie statute, and this company did not. I cannot, other people might have opinions why that occurred. I do not have one. I just know the one in my district did not.
Mr. Chairman, one final question. Do I understand that if this bill goes through, this company would be able to buy these allowances for $2, a set price of $2 per allowance? Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's styled in the amount of allowances they could buy and the cost of those allowances. I think when you do that out, what is it, $1.2 million worth of allowances at.
Well, let me make it, I'll make it easier. I don't know if this is accurate, but I've been told that they could buy the allowances, 7 million of them, at $2, and the fair market value was 13. So if they were desirous of selling them, that is a $11 delta profit that could be made on each allowance. Is that right or is that wrong? The lady, B is behind you is saying it might be wrong.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think that's maybe part of, I think that was said yesterday. I do not think that's right, but I'm going to let the company speak to that directly.
Did you want to show me something?
I might need to phone a friend on the
Okay.
Zoom, Matt Mitchell, but I will tell you that the bill does not allow that to do that. The $2 is only for the contracted portion of the plant, and so we have to buy a certain number of allowances based on the emissions that that plant receives, and no more, no less. And the market is higher. We cannot.
Mr. Chairman,
What's the-
I think Lisa has
Yeah.
the technical explanation of why that's not possible.
Mr. Chairman, so
Yeah.
the bill, if you look beginning on line 64 of the bill in section E1 or subsection E1, it speaks to the cost of being $2 per allowance, but then you'll see that it's capped. So for 21 and 22, they'd be capped at buying up to 2 million allowances, and then it goes down to 1.25 million in 23, 24, and then 0. So my understanding is that the company would basically be using all of those.
Yeah.
That they were allowed to purchase, so there wouldn't be
Okay.
any
Hold
excess.
on, Mr. Chair.
Now, Senator Morrissey.
So you can buy 7 million allowances over a 4 or 5 year period, correct?
But
I'm saying yes, here saying yes.
Yes.
Okay. The next question is, this is an easy one, what is the fair market value of those allowances now, today? I know you can buy them at $2, and I know you can only buy one,
So, Mr. Chairman, I think the
2 million.
issue becomes in line 88 and 89. The company cannot buy those, even though they're capped, if they're not using them based on their prior admissions. So I think that's where the issue is. They can't buy more than what they're using. So if you have to use them, you can't resell them.
Okay. We need to start moving to the finish line here, folks. Senator Lewis, you had a question?
Actually, I just want to speak to it at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, this may be the appropriate time. Go ahead.
Let me just try and maybe cut through some of the fog here. First of all, I'm not without sympathy for LS. That being said, 2 years ago in this very room, we hashed this out ad nauseum. The exact same issue, the exact same facts, the exact same information. And we decided not to follow this course. And the reason, the fundamental reason, the details of all of which escape me now because I can't remember what I had for lunch. But the fundamental reason, as I recall, was LS is a large, sophisticated company with lots of smart people and resources available to it. And they made a bad business decision in an environment where this train was coming down the track. Other people made smarter decisions. Other people were not similarly situated factually. And so that's the gist of it. And so, in my view, at this point, relitigating the same question again 2 years later, we're about to try and decide that it's okay for these large, sophisticated companies to make bad business decisions, and we're going to give them an out. Again, I understand, not totally unsympathetic, but much like Walton a few minutes ago, I got about a list 2 pages long of bad deals that I've made that I'm living with. And so that's where we find ourselves today.
Okay, thank you, Senator Lewis. Anybody else want to speak, or the chair will entertain a motion?
This one is bound for finance, Mr. Chair.
Going to finance. Okay.
I think for 2 reasons. Number one.
God, this is really tough because I'm sympathetic with LS, but the problem is I'm looking at a bill which rewrites the Reggie section, which we spent a ton of time on to accommodate one industrial user. And I think I did vote in favor of LS 2 years ago. But I just, at this point, I got to be honest, I'm not going to be with it this time, and I'm sorry. But we may get this to come over from the House, so we may see it again. But anyways. Clerk, open the roll.
What is the motion, Mr. Chair?
It wasn't seconded.
Motion report. I had a second. A motion report and send to finance.
Ayes 8, noes 7.
Sneaks out. Okay, 8-7, you win.
I don't know that my streak in finance is going to be quite as good as it was this morning.
Okay. Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's time to talk about gas. So
Okay.
I have a substitute. If you could circulate that.
Motion and a second to circulate substitute.
Oh, my gosh, thank you. You're amazing.
So I guess you got to circulate it first.
Yeah, no, I got to have paper.
Gosh, I didn't know I could ask for it.
Yeah.
Learn something every day.
All right, Scott, why don't you explain to us what is going on in this bill, because it's not easy.
No, it's
My
not.
committee would-
And
I wanna take-
Mr. Chairman, I would also tell the committee, this bill needs to be referred to the Commerce and Labor Committee if the committee acts on it favorably.
Okay.
So this bill has to do with making our natural gas industry renewable. And the reason it's here is because it defines some new forms of gas, which is your committee's jurisdiction. So this is all about methane. So methane is what you use to cook with, heat your house, heat your water. Some people run your dryer on it. And most of our methane comes from the Appalachian coal bed, or the Marcellus shale up towards Pennsylvania, et cetera, right now, sort of fracked gas. This gives us an opportunity to use renewable gas instead of stuff that comes out of the ground. So according to the United Nations Environmental Council, methane is a gas that has a 100-year global warming potential that's 28 to 34 times that of CO2. But when you back that up to a 20-year period, it's actually 84 to 86 times more potent at capturing greenhouse energy. So it's really bad for the planet once it gets out and it gets into the environment. It's way worse than carbon dioxide. 60% of methane emissions are caused by human activities. So 60% of it, in theory, could be avoided. And I have some stats, if anybody cares, on where that comes from on the global scale. But I would say that on the Virginia scale, DEQ looked at this back in 2017 as part of a work group they put together to try and control Virginia methane emissions. And DEQ said that in Virginia, 49% of our methane emissions come from coal mines, 38% from landfills, and the rest from other various sources, although they didn't really look at livestock or biomass burning, some of the other things the UN looked at, which obviously create methane. You know, I'm sure everybody's heard about, cows burping, although people say farting, it's really burping, and other things. But in November, President Biden signed an international pledge to reduce American methane emissions by 30%. And he directed EPA to do the same thing. And so EPA is currently working on regulations which are coming down the pipe, which will be binding on us in Virginia eventually to reduce methane emissions. This gives us a chance to get ahead of the curve. So basically what the bill does is it creates a system where our natural gas companies can basically reduce their methane emissions in what are effectively about 3 ways. One is by instead of using gas, just regular old gas, they can use certified low emission gas, which is gas where a third-party NGO has sort of looked at the supply chain to create the gas and independently certifies that it was created using low emissions methods as opposed to what goes on traditionally right now, number one. Number two, they can use biogas. And then number three, they can use enhanced leak detection to reduce leaks in their own system on our existing lines and compressor stations. So in terms of the bill itself, if you look at the actual text of the bill, lines 15 through 23 basically has a broad policy statement that sort of gives the SEC guidance on where the legislature is looking for. Lines 25 through 27 on page 2 define biogas, which is what is in your committee's jurisdiction, I think. And it basically says this is gas that's created through anaerobic digestion or thermal conversion of organic matter, which is basically like taking gas out of a landfill or using methane generated by a composting system. You all passed another bill that I carried last week to encourage that. So you can basically take either food waste or animal waste, throw it in a big tank, heat it up, and methane comes out. You take that and put it in a pipe. So that's happening a lot more in Maryland, a lot in New England. And actually there's biogas already planned here in Virginia.
Let me break. So basically, is the gist of your bill that methane naturally arising in our agricultural community, whatever, can be captured and then put into the pipe and then used?
That's what biogas is.
Right.
The low emission natural gas is different. That's gas that is, I think, produced mostly using traditional methods, but done in a low intensity methane generation type way so that a third party certifies that
Can you explain your bill in one sentence?
This basically makes the natural gas industry renewable. It's like the Clean Energy Act, but for the gas companies who are
so it's
left
just
out.
naturally occurring out of methane.
It takes methane out of that would otherwise be in the atmosphere.
Right, and-
Fugitive methane, put it in a pipe so we can use it and burn it in our house.
Used as a commodity.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah, and then
Mr.
the end of the
Chairman.
bill has to do with the rate recovery piece, which is the part Commerce and Labor is going to have to deal
We're
with.
not going to worry about that. So this really comes down to what's the environmental impact or what's the renewable impact of doing this? Okay,
Mr.
questions?
Chairman.
Senator Marston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Searle, Halifax County has a facility that's run by Novak that takes wood off the forest floor, which in its natural condition creates methane and burns it to create CO2. Is that covered anywhere in this bill? Does that fit in one of your 3 categories, or is that just an entirely different animal?
That's burning stuff to create fuel. If they were to take the wood and throw it in a composter and generate methane in a composter, that would be in theory could fit into this. But by the way, all of this activity is subject to the SEC looking at to make sure it's cost effective before it would ever get passed on to ratepayers. But burning isn't part of this.
Okay, other questions from the panel? Joe Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Scott, does your bill allow for capture of methane at landfills?
Yes.
Yes. Now, Isn't that, further question?
Yes, sir.
Isn't that already done by either the landfill or a company that sees a potential profit in capturing methane and then selling it in the marketplace?
Mr. Chairman, I would say to the Senator, sometimes. Sometimes it's captured and flared off. Sometimes there might be situations where it's hard to transport methane. You have to really compress it and probably liquefy it or something to move it around. What this would do would allow, for example, the natural gas company to hook up, for example, the Prince William landfill to a gas line so that you could constantly get gas out of the landfill into the line, or the Fairfax County landfill, or there's a lot of other landfills, but they would have to be pretty close to an existing line for that to be justifiable.
Final question.
Senator Morrissey.
Would this encourage a partnership between landfill and gas company to sell their methane, and both of them would go at this as a joint venture?
That's exactly what it would do.
By the way, those questions and answers are
I
not
think that's the
scripted.
point, right. Okay. Who do you got to support?
A lot of people.
All right. Come forward. Okay. Line up according to, all right, here we go.
Mr. Chairman, Jim Kibler, Special Adjunct Counsel to Senator Serville.
Okay.
I just want to note for the record that this makes incremental changes to your legislation
Yep,
from
the
2010.
SAVE Act.
That is
Yeah.
now a national model, and I think this bill has that same
Note
potential.
that it's a national model. I'm not a national model, but, okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kyle Shreve, on behalf of the Virginia Agribusiness Council, we do support the bill, and specifically the biogas provision that Senator Serville mentioned. It would incentivize the infrastructure, as you can imagine, which is quite expensive, for capturing methane from agricultural operations and putting it to productive use. We do estimate that the work that is already being done on our hog farms would be reduce CO2 emissions by 2.5 metric tons over a 10-year period, the equivalent of planting 10 million trees. Agriculture is our biggest industry in Virginia, and the waste systems are highly regulated already by the Department of Environmental Quality, and anaerobic digestion is one of the tools we can use to continue to operate sustainably in the Commonwealth.
Thank you,
We support
Kyle.
the bill.
All right, and just try and be punchy, but thanks.
Mr. Chairman, Keith Barton with the Virginia Chamber. We support the bill.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, David Clark, representing the Virginia Oil and Gas Association, and we appreciate Senator Serville's interest in trying to solve a problem that we have in the Commonwealth, and we want to be a part of it.
Thank you, David.
Scott McGarry, Washington Gas.
Okay.
Well, we support this. It will enable us to continue serving our 500,000 customers in Virginia, residential, commercial, and also important municipal transportation fleets such as Arlington's, Prince Williams.
A question from
Thank you.
Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McGarry?
Yes.
I have a question for you. How long do you expect it'll take for the gas company to really change the infrastructure? Because as I'm reading the bill, you're going to have to come up with new pipes and better detection systems, and you need a different infrastructure for this methane. How long is that going to take?
I think that would depend on the needs of each one of our Virginia gas utilities. We would certainly be about to work very, very quickly. Everything in here has to be approved by the State Corporation Commission. And so it is certainly a priority for us and the next generation of service for our company and our customers.
Follow-up question, Mr.
Senator
Chairman?
Favola.
So the gas company would be making the investment up front, and then there might be a ratepayer increase?
The entire program is supervised by the SCC, and it would be in accordance with the plan that we would submit to them.
Okay, thank
And
you.
any infrastructure that would be additional would be necessary to make the connections work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I feel like I'm being followed by some people.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Morgan Whalen with Virginia Natural Gas. We're supportive of the bill. This will help our company meet our net zero goals. Want to clarify one comment that was asked by Senator Favola. The biogas will meet pipeline quality, so it will go into our existing infrastructure. That's the same thing with the differentiated next generation gas. We use that today. We actually have a fair amount in our system. So that goes into our existing pipeline infrastructure and allows our existing infrastructure help us get to net zero.
Thank you. Okay, next.
Walton Shepherd with the NRDC, and we are strongly supportive of the exhaustive process that is underway to hopefully get to a point where we can successfully, A, reduce emissions, and B, protect consumers so that we have a success story on addressing climate change in low-cost ways. So fingers crossed.
Thank you, Walton. Good.
Mr. Chairman, Ross Snare from the Prince William Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of our 1,200 members, we support the bill.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Palmer on behalf of Smithfield Foods, and we support the bill.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Connor Kish with the Sierra Club. You're right, this is a tough one. We're not prepared to oppose the bill today. We do have some significant concerns about the infrastructure section, but as Senator Servell pointed out, that's headed to Commerce if it
Okay.
gets out of here. But ultimately, this is a very sticky issue, and we do think there's a solution that can be found, and appreciate Senator Servell convening us to try and find that solution. And we won't oppose it today, but we may in the end, and we may not.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Chris?
He got me.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So we've got some people that are violently neutral, and then we've got some people in favor. Anybody out and out opposed? Okay. Anybody online, Sean?
One speaker, Mr. Chair.
One speaker. Okay. Clayton Medford.
Mr. Chairman, Clayton Medford, Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce, in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Clayton. Okay. This goes to Commerce. Yeah. So we'll need a motion to report and refer to Commerce. Okay, I've got a motion and a second to report and refer to Commerce. Sean, please open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Great. Okay, good work. Ayes
Thank you.
15, no 0. The bill reports and refers to Commerce.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other out-of-committee patrons? Senator Pillion.
So this bill is about red meat.
All right.
So Senate Bill 726. Before the pandemic, red meat slaughter in Virginia decreased by almost 26% between 2009 and 2019. That increased by over 19% in the same time period nationwide. The pandemic certainly highlighted supply chain issues that still exist today within many sectors, but especially in the meat industry. So, Mr. Chairman, this bill directs VDACs to develop a 5-year strategic plan to increase the capacity of inspected meat processing facilities and provide recommendations on how to implement that plan. And that's basically the bill.
Okay. Do you have any witnesses in favor of the bill?
Not as many as Serval.
Okay, come on in.
Thank you for bringing this forward. I'm Jim Riddell, representing the thousands of Virginia cattlemen across the state, and we support the bill. This is a win for urban. It's a win for rural. We have a real need at this moment to be able to expand, and definitely a plan is needed for the expansion of local meat processing across Virginia. This is the first time, I just have to say, this has ever been coordinated across the state. Been a lot of little individual efforts, but thank you and thank Delegate Wilt on the House side for bringing this forward. It's coordinated. It's a real plus for Virginia. We support the bill.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Stephanie Talon with Virginia Farm Bureau. You've already heard the need for increasing the meat processing capacity within Virginia, so I won't dwell on that too long, but I will just say that in speaking with our members, this has been an issue again before COVID and even now. The demand for buying local is through the roof right now, but our producers just can't get into those processing facilities to meet the demand. And in talking with them, they share challenges related to the high cost of starting up these facilities with infrastructure costs, the need for specialized labor, the need for navigating the regulatory environment. So there's a variety of issues and challenges we think that are going into these challenges for increasing capacity, which is why the bill is directing VDACs to look at the problem, see where we are and see where we want to go, and put some together some more thoughtful solutions and approaches, again, for increasing that capacity. So we do support the bill. Thank you for your support, and thanks, Senator Pillion, for doing so as well.
Okay. Kyle.
Mr. Chairman, the Virginia Agribusiness Council supports the bill.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Charlie Broadus, State Veterinarian with VDACs. We support the bill.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this is the second time I get to stand up with our agricultural industry and voice the Virginia League Conservation voters' support for this. We think this will add to, this will make support for local and more sustainable farms more possible here, and we're grateful for the patron for bringing the bill forward.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, VCN also supports this bill. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Any opposition? This is kind of getting boring. Okay. I got a motion and a second to report. Clerk, open the roll. You like boring.
Don't even. No. Oh my gosh.
Senator Mason. Thank you. Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay. Ayes 15, no 0. By the way, as a little bit of a cleanup, I should have done this on the front end. I had Senate Bill 773 from Senator Cosgrove needs to go by for the week. That was oyster leases. Okay, we have a motion, a second, take that by for the week. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. And then, Lynn, did you want to take by? Okay, all right. Okay, let's go. I'm just gonna go to the front and let's go with Senate Bill 28. Dave Marston, ready sites. Are you ready for your ready sites?
I'm ready for my.
Okay.
I am ready for ready sites. We have a substitute, if I could.
Clerk, we have a motion, a second to distribute the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Clerk, please distribute. Okay, Senator Marsden, tell us what's going on here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 28 deals with creation of a Virginia Business Ready Sites Program Fund. The substitute offers changes to the definitions of an eligible industrial site. VEDP plans to develop a regional funding pool based on Go Virginia Regions 9. Therefore, the substitute references the Go Virginia Regions versus Planning District Commissions. The substitute also provides a floor for acreage to ensure the sites targeted for funding will be competitive for VEDP's targeted traded sector industries while recognizing the topography constraints of Southwest Virginia. Planning Districts 1, 2, and 3 make up Go Virginia's Region 1. Portions of Region 2, specifically the Allegheny Highlands, have also been similar issues related to topography and are also included. In other words, when you have very hilly territory, you are going to need additional acreage. Finally, based on the budget appropriation from 2019 that allowed VEDP to characterize sites of 25 acres and up, the substitute includes this in the eligible site definition to characterize sites of 25 acres and above. While 25-acre sites would not be eligible for VBRSP funding, they would be eligible for Go Virginia funding, which requires the site to be characterized to be eligible for development funding. Now, remember, the governor in the introduced budget, we have $150 million into this, whereas before I've had very, very limited funding. And this puts us in a competitive situation with some of our sister states like Georgia and North Carolina, who've invested even more than $150 million in getting sites ready. And remember, these sites are, what we're doing is the planning so that when somebody comes to Virginia and gets, and has identified one of these sites, the planning will have already been done for utilities and roads and any of the infrastructure needed so that it could proceed at the same time as the construction of the facility. The substitute clarifies industrial employment to mean Virginia's total employment. The substitute now includes definitions for the types of grants awarded by the fund, characterization or development grants. By defining the types of grants, the substitute also clarifies the use of the funds to provide site characterization or site development grants. I could go on. I have another page of talking points here. But the idea is that some of these will be competitive, some of them will be granted by region, and this is a very, very important part of Virginia's economic future. And to set this fund up so that that can be distributed according to the bill is clearly important. And again, I would reiterate, $150 million exists in the budget as it stands right now to implement this, to be placed into this fund and to start getting it out to Virginia sites, and let's get us competitive and not lose out to Kentucky, North Carolina, Georgia, and our other friends to the south.
Okay, is there a budget amendment on this? Or I guess the money's already in the budget.
The money for the big part of the money, yes, is already in the budget.
Okay, anyone here to speak on behalf of or in favor of Senate Bill 28?
Chairman, again, Scott McCary, Washington Gas. We strongly support this. I think it's one of the most important things this committee and this General Assembly can do to advance economic development, and hope it will be your pleasure to report the bill. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Favola.
I have a question. I don't know who might be best positioned to answer it, maybe the patron, but how does this intersect with that Go Virginia fund? I mean, that's also an economic development.
I think that Christy
engine.
Morton is here who could better explain it, but I think it's basically coordinating, between, those two mechanisms.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Christy Morton with the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. Senator Favola, Go Virginia does have funding where one of their priority eligible uses is site development.
Right.
I will tell you there are some differences between their program and the Virginia Business Ready Sites program, which is at VEDP. For the Virginia Business Ready Sites program, eligible sites have to be 100 acres and up. For Go Virginia, those can be smaller than that. And basically, for this program, it's all about site characterization and development. With Go Virginia, they have other eligible uses for their funding, but we work very closely with Go Virginia. We on sites and other things. We've provided information from the 2019 characterization process, so we provide details and data to them to help with any applications involving site
Is it fair to
development.
say that this is focused more on sites as opposed to Go Virginia might be focused on entrepreneurs or sort of ideas?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. They have sites are one of the eligible uses
all right.
for their funds that they consider applications around sites. This is specifically just site development.
Just site development, all right. Yeah, publicly
Yes, ma'am.
owned, too. Looks like,
These can be publicly or privately owned. They do, we would enter into, there's an agreement, an MOU, but about 2/3 of the sites in the Commonwealth are privately held. So if you want to really get it building a portfolio, we do need
Okay.
to work with those as well.
all right, anyone else, let me ask, is anyone opposed?
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, Senator Hanger.
I just have a question. Actually, Patron or Christie might be able to answer this. I noticed on page 9, we're repealing some sections, and when I cross-referenced it, it's the Major Employment and Investment Project Site Plant Granting Fund. Well, my question speaks to, are we also eliminating the MEI Commission?
No, sir, they are, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senator Hanger, these are very two different things. This is a fund that has just kind of been on the books, but has not had funding in it. And so it's just kind of a cleanup measure in the legislation, not related to the MEI Commission, which we would certainly not want to do away with.
Mr. Chairman, if I could answer.
Senator Marston.
Thank you. Senator Hanger, anything $10 million and up will be referred to the Major Employment Investment, the MEI. So any 10 million.
10 million.
Over 10 million will come to the MEI.
Okay. All righty. Chair will entertain a motion. Okay, we've got a motion to report and refer to finance in a second. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay, 15-0. All right, is Suterline here? Not here, okay. We did McDougal. McClellan we did. Senator Lewis, 508. Why don't you go up front?
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I have Senate Bill 508. And Senate Bill 508 deals with the Community Flood Preparedness Fund, and it also, in the primary thrust of the change is it shifts control oversight over to the Soil and Water Conservation Board. There have been some, I don't want to say complaints, but some concerns expressed particularly with the robustness of the regional greenhouse gas auctions and the income coming in from those auctions, that DCR internally was probably not the best oversight or agency or bandwidth to handle administration of the funds, approval of the projects, and so forth. So what we do in 508 is, again, move that over to the Soil and Water Conservation Board. Soil and Water Conservation Board deals with the dam safety fund now, floodplain plan, and has experience in a lot of these administering grant programs and dealing with large sums of money. And again, there's also a transparency issue here. It's a board. It has the same requirements of any board as far as transparency goes. They're accountable and a great deal of oversight as well as the experience. And so what we do is increase the number of members from 9 to 11. And then the new appointments come, one from the House of Delegates, from the Speaker of the House of Delegates, and one from the Rules Committee of the Senate. One of the new appointments is to be from outside of the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and one is to be from a flood-prone community in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, flood-prone community outside of the watershed as well. And then we also have a substitute, which I would like to move, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Can we have a motion to accept the substitute? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, Lisa, can you distribute, or somebody? You got it. Oh, we got it. Okay, never mind.
And Mr. Chairman, this substitute addresses some concerns from Agribusiness and Farm Bureau about the changes to the Soil and Water Conservation Board, particularly the quorum requirement. 6 members needed to constitute a quorum. At least 4 shall be farmer or district director representatives, as set out previously in the existing statute. And the reason is, obviously, Soil and Water Conservation Board has a lot of other oversight duties, and we want to make sure that they're agricultural specific, and we want to make sure that ag is well represented when those decisions are made. You'll also note that that records for grants and loans and acts taken on there should be open to the public and inspection at the office of the board. Again, the transparency piece there. And an annual report is required to the Assembly and the Governor as to the activities in regard to the Soil and Water Conservation Board with the Community Flood Preparedness Fund.
Okay.
That's the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Lewis. Okay, do we have anyone to speak in support? Martha?
Mr. Chairman, Martha Moore, Virginia Farm Bureau, and we support the changes and appreciate the patron working with us.
Thank you. Kyle?
I'll just say the exact same thing, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. The council supports, appreciate the patron working with us.
Okay. Peggy?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Peggy Santa, Chesapeake Bay Foundation. We also support the bill for the reasons that the senator articulated. Thank you.
Okay.
VCN also supports.
Okay, VCN. Okay, great. All right. Anyone opposed? Okay, we have a motion. Oh, you have 4 speakers. All right. All right, why don't we just do this? Just have them come on and state their name and their position. That's it.
Zachary Sheldon, please unmute yourself, state your name, your organization, and your position on the bill.
Good afternoon, Chairman Zachary Sheldon with the Nature Conservancy, and we support the bill.
Brent Hunsinger, you're next.
Brent Hunsinger, Friends of the Rappahannock, and we do support the bill. Thank you.
Jamie Bronco, please.
Afternoon, Jamie Bronco, the James River Association. We support the bill. Thank you.
William Stiles.
William Stiles from Wetlands Watch in Norfolk. We always support what Senator Lewis does. We're in favor of the bill.
There you go.
Emily Steinhilber, please.
Emily Steinhilber, Environmental Defense Action Fund, and we support the bill. Thank you.
No further speakers virtually, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to report the bill. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 15, noes 0.
Okay, ayes 15, noes 0. And that gets us through.
I've got one more, Mr. Chair, if I can.
Oh, you got one more. Okay, what else do you got?
756.
756. Okay, go ahead.
And Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 756 creates the Resilient Virginia Revolving Loan Fund. This is a recommendation of the Chesapeake Bay Commission after a resiliency policy gaps analysis. In other words, they're looking at what we had and finding out where we fell short, particularly in reference to other Bay watershed states. This is modeled after the Maryland and South Carolina revolving loan funds. There is a $25 million companion budget amendment in right now. And so what this seeks to do primarily is to provide gap funding and to provide a fund for local governments to address resilience issues, matching.
Oh, can we, motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, please.
Appreciate
distribute the
that. Sorry
substitute.
about that.
That's all
Appreciate
right.
Mr. Stanley for the cue, Senator Stanley for the cue. And so what this does is, it can be used, and the primary focus is to provide matching requirements of other funding sources, gap financing needs for projects that have not got 100% of their funding, and to provide more flexibility in funding resilient projects. So it's just another tool in the toolbox. Never heard that before, have you?
Never.
And in our resilience efforts, and again, comes after an analysis of what policies we had in place compared to what other Bay watershed area states had in place. So that's the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any questions for the patron? Okay, anyone in support or opposition? Come forward. Peggy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Chesapeake Bay Foundation, we support the bill. It's, as the senator said, another important tool to address sea level rise and localized flooding. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chairman, Anna Killius with the James River Association, and we also support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Okay. Okay, any questions from the panel? We've got a couple virtually. Okay, go ahead.
Andrea McClellan, would you please unmute and begin your testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to support this bill. As chair of the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, we recognize the need for an ongoing source to address flooding mitigation, and this is a great opportunity to do so. So thank you, Senator Lewis.
Thank you, Andrea. Okay.
Brett Hunsinger, would you please unmute and begin your testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For all the reasons mentioned by the people in front of me, Friends of the Rappahannock also supports this bill. Thank you.
Okay. We have a question from Senator Favola. Go to finance. Okay. Senator Favola.
Okay, question for the patron. The recipients of this money would be only local governments, or could it be local governments in partnership with nonprofits or?
Richard, I think you're next.
My understanding of the way the bill is constructed is it would go to the local governments to create these programs that may involve individuals and individual projects. But I think the primary focus, again, is, as I said, is gap funding when there's a gap in between when grants are applied for, when they're received, or if you're falling short in a project, something of that nature. When we're talking $25 million, it's a loan fund. It's going to be self-sustaining after the initial influx of $25 million. But I stand to be corrected on that if anybody has a different view of that.
Okay, Senator Lewis, you got it correct.
The peanut gallery is telling me it is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Chair will entertain a motion.
Report, refer to finance.
Okay, the motion is to report and refer to finance. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Ayes 15, no 0. Okay, we're down to our
Thank you,
last
Mr. Chair.
couple.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator Stewart,
Mr. Chairman, I've got Senate Bill 678.
678.
Oh, I apologize. Mr. Chairman, this is a very simple bill. Unfortunately, some localities don't recognize livestock under agricultural definitions, so this just makes it very clear. And it really is that simple. I'm happy to answer any questions, but.
All right, Senate Bill 678, do we have anybody support? Go ahead, Kyle.
Mr. Chairman, Kyle Shreve, on behalf of the Virginia Agribusiness Council, we do just see this as a technical clarification to what we already believe is existing law, and appreciate Senator Stewart for carrying it.
Martha Moore, Virginia Farm Bureau, we support.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, Jim Riddell with Virginia Cattlemen, we support the bill.
Okay, all right. Opposition.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and I'd like to apologize to the patron for not being able to speak face-to-face, but just to his aid. Joanna Faust on behalf of Fairfax County. The county's concerns are twofold. Under Virginia Code 15.2-2288.6, localities are not permitted to regulate specified activities as agricultural operations unless there's a substantial impact on health, safety, or welfare. If the housing of livestock were added to the definition here, anyone housing sheep, Horses, deer, pigs, ostrich, roosters, rabbits, or other animals raised for food or fiber could be considered agritourism. That's because the definition of livestock under Virginia 3.2-6500, as this committee I'm sure is well aware, is so broad, including bovine, equine animals, enclosed domesticated hares, rabbits, porcine animals, and several terms that I can't pronounce. So the concern here is that localities would not be able to regulate unless that there would be a substantial impact. And the second concern would be that as the bill is potentially could result in exempting even more buildings from building code requirements. And that's because the building code exempts farm buildings from building permit requirements. And since Virginia Code 3697 defines a farm building to include structure on property where farming operation takes place, farming operations isn't defined, so commonly what's done is look to the definition of agricultural operation. That with this new expanded definition, potentially many more buildings would be excluded from the definition and would not be required to have building permits. And so for those reasons, we would respectfully bring our concerns and oppose. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stewart.
I think that's one of the jurisdictions that wasn't recognizing livestock as part of agriculture. And really is the reason for the bill. And while I respect Fairfax County, our agriculture is a huge part of our heritage and our culture in Virginia. It's why we come to Richmond in the wintertime instead of during the summer. And this bill is very necessary to clarify our position on this, so I hope you all will support it.
Okay. Anybody else to speak on the bill? I'm going to do a Rule 36 on this bill. I have opinion on it, but I won't speak it. So, all right. We have a motion, report, and a second. All right. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 12, noes 2, abstentions 1.
All right. Bill reports 12-2. They're there. Okay. All right. We're down to our last couple. Senator Mason, are you up?
Yes, ma'am. Senate Bill 684. So a couple years ago, I brought you pollution control equipment is not subject to retail sales and use tax. And so a couple of years ago, we had found a problem that we were doing all these projects and the people doing the work weren't getting the credit until the end of the project. So we just allowed them to get the credit up front for doing the work. So it turns out somebody like Hampton Roads Sanitation District, HRSD, can go and establish these and start buying pollution control equipment, setting up facilities. They have to come to Richmond and explain to DEQ what is pollution control equipment and get DEQ to certify and sign off on their tax exemption. This is just saying that we can establish a subdivision certifying authority that the people that do this locally know what they're doing, understand what pollution control equipment is, and can say this qualifies as pollution control equipment and it's exempted from the retail sales and use tax. It's really the beginning of a long-standing reduction in regulation that I've heard a lot about recently.
You expecting a primary?
Probably, but if it's on this bill, I got a shot.
One?
If they bring up pollution control equipment, I'm feeling like I got the wind in my back.
Okay, so we have Senate Bill 684. I have my second Mike roll band cited of the day. Do we have people to testify in favor of the bill? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Chris Pomeroy, representing the Virginia Association of Municipal Wastewater Agencies. You all have given us a lot to do in a short time to get there, including Center Hangar's big Chesapeake Bay bill with all the nutrient projects last year. There's some CSO work in my members' future. This helps us speed up the process and get the job done. We
Great.
support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike.
Thank you. We support the bill, and I've now successfully achieved my 25% reduction, correct?
There you go. Yes, you have.
Joe Lurch with VACO in support of the bill. I actually instructed Pomeroy to speak on behalf of VACO just to limit this, so we're in support, and so is VML, according to Chris. So thank you.
Joe. Okay, anybody in opposition? I don't see anybody.
If there's anybody online, I recommend daytime television.
Okay. I've got a motion to report. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion to report in a second. Clerk, open the roll, please.
Oh, I got a truckload.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Okay, does anyone else have a bill in the committee that we haven't called yet? Senator Marson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 707. And a couple of years ago, introduced a bill at the behest of Congressman Beyer, who is working on national wildlife corridor legislation. And what it did was ask that our wildlife and VDOT, those two agencies, to put in place a plan for wildlife corridors in terms of identifying places, what have you, for that. Then last year, we also asked all of the state agencies in their planning process to include wildlife corridors. And what this does is create a fund, a non-reverting fund, that if we so choose to fund it, or private entities ask to or are willing to put private funding into it, to create a fund to construct wildlife crossings in Virginia. The one we've had that's been the most successful is on Route 64 on the far side of Charlottesville near Afton Mountain, where they've cut down on animal and vehicle collisions by 98%, and the savings to property damage and life. It allows animals to move back and forth across major highways, to mate, to find food, to do whatever, and it just cuts down on property damage and the risk to the loss of life from hitting these creatures. So the fund is hereby would be created, and if the state so chooses to put money into it, or private companies or individuals decide to put money into it, we have a way of funding these identified projects as set forth by our state agencies, and that's what the bill does.
Okay. Anyone to speak in support? They're all galloping outside. Anyone to speak in opposition?
Mr. Chair, we do have one person in support online.
Okay.
Yay.
Let them through.
Zachary Sheldon, please unmute.
Mr. Chairman, Zachary Sheldon with the Nature Conservancy. We support the legislation. We want to thank the sponsor for his continued work on wildlife corridor legislation. Not only does it help prevent loss of life and damages, but also helps increase connectivity for wildlife. And I do just want to note that the recently passed federal infrastructure bill includes $350 million for wildlife corridor projects. So this legislation and previous legislation puts Virginia in a good position to help get some of that federal funding.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Is Tua the long-term solution at quarterback?
As I've said about every quarterback since Dan Marino, yes, I'm confident and sure he is the long-term solution.
All right, thank you. Okay. All right, any other comments about this bill?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to report the bill. Goes to finance. Report and refer to finance. Clerk, open the roll. Okay.
Ayes 12, noes 3.
Ayes 12, noes 3. 3 noes. Okay. Do we have any other bills amongst the membership? I had a suitor line on the docket today, but I guess we'll have to kick that to next week. Okay, we're going to have a big week next week. We're going to have all the commission bills and at least the Reggie bills. So we're going to have some fun next week. So get some sleep, get some exercise, and we'll see you here next week. Thank you.